Hey guys, Novel Bushido here and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about SUNBREAK and 3 things Monster Hunter Rise SUNBREAK needs to do to be my favorite and maybe even the best Monster Hunter game in history. Let's get into this. So firstly, we're going to talk about balance. Now, Monster Hunter Rise has been critiqued a lot when it comes to its balance of the Y bug and some of the other things in the game, such as status, elemental weapons, status weapons. I'm the only one who talks about that, but yeah, we have some issues that we need to address. So one thing when it comes to the Y bug is increasing the Y bug recharge. Some skills on the Y bug definitely recharge too fast. But for instance, some counters can be used too often. It'll be really good if, having the ability to have those counters there is great. Those attacks are really cool. They're really fun. They're interesting. But what would make it even more interesting and fantastic is if the cooldown was longer. So for when people want to use them, they need to really think more of when they want to use them and why, in what situation. So it's not just every hit I'm countering. It's, okay, I need to watch out for this big move and that's the move I'm going to counter. Having those decisions on how and when you're going to use stuff is important. Going on from there, Y-full recharge needs to be longer as well. So the Y-full recharge isn't too long. I don't know off the top of my head how long it is, but it's probably around 5 seconds to 6 seconds recharge. I think it needs to be much longer than that. It's probably actually at 10 actually. It needs to be longer though in general. This will put more emphasis on people thinking about when they want to Y-full. There are some monsters that have attacks that you can't Y-full from, and it would be cool to get more of those and more grabs as well that can punish and you can't Y-full out of the grabs. But being able to Y-full out of a lot of stuff can definitely alleviate a lot of the danger, and it would be nice to balance it a bit. The option is cool there, similar to, like I said, the switch skills and the Y arts, but just limit it down a bit, I think would be fantastic. Also in balancing, status and elemental weapons, like I said before. So raw weapons have been the meta since World, and it's pretty dumb. The fact that you can just pick up a raw weapon and then go through the whole game and not really have to think about what monsters' weaknesses are. And that's a core pillar of Monster Hunter, to me at least. Ever since Try, I loved picking up different status and different elemental weapons and testing them out and seeing how well they perform against different monsters. Now in the newer games, since we have damage numbers, I suppose now we really know what's the best to go for. I've said this before, but it's very likely in the older games it was still raw was meta, but unless you're a speedrunner, you don't really pay attention to that. But in my case, someone who just plays the games didn't really care about the numbers, just care about the game itself. I always went for the elemental or status option when the opportunity arose. But in newer games, it does seem like raw is always the way to go. So if they can give elemental weapons a bit more of a boost on damage and status as well, this also ties into making it easier and better to make elemental and status armor and weapons, as you penalize quite a lot to make status weapons in World and in Rise. Some of the options aren't really there, and if you want the decorations for those, if you want the skills for those status boosts, you have to put a lot of effort into getting those, and the reward for those armors isn't much compared to just going for raw attack and crit and so on. So if they can buff that up, that will really fix the balancing a lot, and it will make things a lot more interesting for people who have a problem with the game's balancing. It will just make it a much more fantastic game overall, which Rise already is when it comes to combat. Next, we're going to quest variety and monster types. So this has already been a thing where there's not enough quest varieties. A lot of the quests are just, just slay this one monster going through the game. Some you might be slay 2, but that's rare when it comes to it. In 8-star there was more, which was cool, but before that there wasn't as many. So I'm thinking more options on 3 to 5 monster hunts, and the way they divide the HP shouldn't be as much as they do now. I think the fights could be longer, which would be great. These are like, if you're gonna be fighting these 5 monsters, you're gonna be spending like 40 minutes, 10 minutes on each one, rather than now in the new gen, since the monsters have, well, it's always been the case, but when there's more monsters, the HP is reduced. So a monster that might normally take you like 30 minutes will take you like 6 minutes in a multiple quest. So maybe instead of taking 6 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes. So it's still reduced, but not as much reduced. I think that'd be more interesting overall. But yeah, more quests like that would be great. It will just add to the variety for people so they can have more hunts. Also hunter-thons, those are also amazing. Being able to just hunt a lot of monsters in one quest, maybe the same monster over and over. If I want to fight 10 Magamalos, just make Magamalos show up all across the map. Like, they haven't done that since GU. And I do love those quests, definitely for some key monsters that I'm really trying to hammer down on what I need. They did a lot of that back in GU. No, sorry, not GU, 3U. They did a lot of it in there, and it would be nice to see those things kind of return. Also, hypered and tempered monsters. Now, I've harped on this one quite a lot over the year, but hyper monsters to come back would be great. These would just add so much variety in monster opportunities to fight, much more difficult, varied in speed, varied in attack pattern as well, slightly. Like, it will just be a really cool facet to the game. Also, if they tie in weapons, also upgrades, so personal weapons for hyper versions of monsters like in GU, that will just add so much content when it comes to creating different weapons and creating so many different build varieties out there when it comes to weapons and armors. So armor unlocks can also be upgraded by killing hyper monsters and unlocking the hyper armor pieces to further increase your defense. I think that would be fantastic and that would be really cool. Apart from that, amped up monsters. So amped up monsters in Rise, we got some in later stages, like in 8 star. I think it's 8 star, 7 star, I actually don't know. You get some near the end where they actually add 2 monster quests like Magnamalo and I think it's Naga Cougar or Rathalos and Bazagis. Like, they do that, some of that stuff, and they hit much harder. And also in event quests they came, but they do come a bit later than I think they should. They should be filtered around the game. Difficulty shouldn't just come at end game. That's a problem with the new world monster hunter. So they definitely need to scale it so difficulty comes along the way and at end game as well. I think that'll be fun enough for people as they go across, so they're not thinking it's too easy as they go into the later parts of the game. Lastly, we got smaller monsters having the larger ones, which comes into, you know, monster variety and types and stuff like that. There's a lot of monsters in base Rise where they don't have the large monsters, like the Zamites. You know, there's no Zamshuros, or the I don't even know what the small ones are. The small Agnactors. There's no big Agnactor. You know, stuff like that. We saw the small Tetsukaba that Hojo's riding, but there's no Tetsukaba. So, you know, stuff like that. It'll be really cool if we could see the big monsters for the smaller ones. You know, we see Jaggy, but there's no Great Jaggy. I mean, that happened in GU as well, but still, it'll be fantastic if we can get some of the larger monsters as well, so we can just pop up, you know, different types of monsters across that, you know, already have the small ones. Like, why not? Like, I think that would just be fantastic to have back. Lastly, better event quests and collabs. So this one has been beaten to death, but I'm going to go over it again, and yeah, let's get into it. So better events. So events didn't come to the game at first, and when they did come to the game, they started pretty slow, quite easy ones, nothing too difficult. They definitely got more interesting with the emergency ones. Those are great, but of course those came much later, probably like 6-7 months after the game came out. I think some of them need to come out the gate. Of course you want to save some for later, but you know, Monster Hunter's in a game of service, so people want more to do now rather than wait later. They want it at their own pace. So if you give a bunch at the start and then filter out more later, it just makes it more interesting for people as they have options on when they want to do quests, whenever and whatever order. And as more come in, they can always come back to play more. So that just keeps them happy when they're playing the game, and also happy when they're finished playing the game. Also, event quests that give armor and weapons. Old Monster Hunter games, a lot of them gave you armor and weapons. In the new ones, not as much. It'll be great if we get a return to that. That'll be fantastic. Better collabs as well. Definitely, we had no Nintendo collabs for Monster Hunter Rise, which is very surprising. My hunch, that has to do with COVID, because we definitely should have seen some. That probably threw out some of the plans of coordination and scheduling, so they fell out the window. But still, it would be fantastic if we could have those collabs back. You know, Link, Star Fox, Metroid. I want to see those. Also collabs of anime and manga from, you know, some of those ones. Like we had things like Fairy Tail, we had things like Magi. So if you could get some of those stuff back, that would be fantastic. I would love it. So if they do all of this when it comes to balance and event quests, I actually think that would add a lot to the difficulty overall, as a mix of hyper monsters, amped up monsters, more amped up monsters, nerfs to the wire bug, wire fall, buffs to elemental and status, nerfs to counters in most situations, like, and even an expanded weapon tree. Like, that would just add so much to difficulty and end game overall. If they just tackle up those smaller areas, it just boosts up all the other things that people want as well. So the way I like to tackle things is tackle things from the lowest denominator, not the highest. For example, you know, people talk about end game, but I mean, just saying end game doesn't mean much unless you're actually thinking about the things that go into end game and the things that can contribute to end game, and things like hyper monsters, more monsters in quests, and nerfing some areas of the game will just make the end game even more interesting and more fun, as you have more options to tackle end game, and you have more to do in end game itself, rather than just adding in loads of quests just for an end game purpose. These ways are solutions to those. So yeah, that's why I kind of like pushing for this type of changes for SUNBREAK. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video, guys. I don't have anything more to minutes to be added. I mean, new monsters would be great. Definitely some of the popular new monsters, old monsters coming back, and some new monsters that are great that we've never seen before. Interesting quests, you know, like sieges, maybe some interesting ones. I mean, we have rampages. If they make rampages more interesting, that'd be great. If they do bring them back. If not, some new cool sieges would be cool. Yeah, just new things in general, just to boost up and get people more wanting to keep in the game. That'd be absolutely fantastic. You know, like Rise has such a great foundation. It just needs a lot of tweaks on particular areas. If they can get that done for SUNBREAK, this is going to be the best, I would say the best G rank expansion ever. So I'm really hopeful, I'm really hyped, but I need to see more, and yeah, we need to stay tuned for that. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Leave a comment down below, like the video, and let me know what you want to see in SUNBREAK, and I'll catch you guys next time. See you.